Well, welcome back, everyone, to Digital Hammurabi. I am Dr. Josh, and we are continuing on with our cool lessons in Biblical Hebrew. This series is designed specifically for the beginner to learn how to read that language that might seem a little esoteric to people, a little out there, can't really get a hold of it because it looks so funny. But in reality, I think like so many things that we try to tackle in our lives, it's more within reach than we realize. So we do this series so that people can come in and they can learn biblical Hebrew, so that they can begin to engage with the Hebrew Bible in a more meaningful way, and it makes it easier when you're, and even if you have sort of a cursory understanding, a general understanding, not only of how the language goes together, but the resources that you can utilize, some of the more important commentaries, those sorts of things. You can more effectively engage with people, whether you're a Christian or an atheist or an agnostic or whatever you are. Sorry, those aren't the only three categories, but if you're anybody out there, you can, and you talk about these topics, you can do so in a way that's a little more meaningful. So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen. Again, we are still using the very nice StreamYard, and I have done something a little bit differently, something a little bit different today. So we should be able to see the text a little bit better. Let me know in the side chat. Last week I know we had the text half and half, and I actually think this layout's going to work out a little bit better. So as we do, we do the first 30 or 45 minutes going through the actual grammar. So this is lesson 9, and we are using, just because it's the one that I learned with, and it's a fairly handy grammar to use. This is, just let that focus, 🀭Support, a grammar for biblical Hebrew, and excellent work. Again, I don't think I got his name up there, but it's 𝀭Support. Oops, we go this way with it. And you can pick that up on Amazon or wherever else one buys books today. But we are in chapter 8, I think. Yes. In chapter 8, which is on page 78 of the third edition, or the revised edition here. And he begins the chapter talking about the different, what are known in Hebrew today as the binyanim. So the different structures for the verbs. So you've heard me parsing a lot, and you've heard me say things like, this is a cal active participle, or this is a cal imperfect. What I want to take a minute and kind of go through, just in an introductory fashion. We're not going to actually learn what all the different conjugations are for these different verbs, but I want you to just understand in general how the verbal system works. So in English, if I say, I hit the ball, or Johnny, that's probably easier. Johnny hit the ball. That is an active verb. Active meaning there's a subject, and it is, it's doing the action. If you say Johnny was hit by the ball, now the subject of the sentence is receiving the action of the verb. So in other words, something is being done to the subject as opposed to the subject doing something. So that's called a passive verb. There's also a reflexive. So if I were to say Johnny hit himself, Johnny is both the subject of the verb, but he's also receiving the action of the verb. So Johnny hit himself. It's reflexive. The subject and that which receives the action are the same. So, okay, all of that to say there are different ways that Hebrew doesn't use um if I were to say if so, let's take that sentence. Johnny hit the ball. Johnny was hit. The addition of the word was there in that construction um, is what makes that a passive. It's what makes that verb passive in that context. So it adds the word was to make it passive. Well, um, Hebrew doesn't do that, and a lot of languages don't. Most Semitic languages don't do that. What they do is you have a basic root, right? You have a basic root, and to that root, they'll add prefixes, they'll add suffixes, and then they'll add infixes. So they'll change what comes before. They'll add something to the front, they'll add something to the back, they'll add something to the middle. They'll change around the shape of the verbal form itself in order to change the verbal nuance, the meaning of the verb, or the yeah. I'm trying to think of better words to use here that aren't so um, linguistic. But let me give you an example. Um, Shamar. Shamar has this Comet's Pathak verbal pattern, Shamar. And this is your standard, like, active verb, right? So if this means if let's back up. These three letters, shin, mem, resh, have the idea of guarding something, right? So anything that um, yeah, anything that has to do with, like, not anything, but if you see shin mem resh, it's probably going to have some idea of guarding something, or protecting or watching over or whatever. So if we write shamar, it's just a simple active um, past verb. He guarded, right? If we write show mer, that's a participle. We looked at those last week. Shomer, so he is guarding. If we said yishmor, that is he will guard, or it's an imperfect form. He will guard. So you can see by changing things around the root of the word or of the verb, you can change the tense, for lack of a better term here, or the aspect of the verb. And these all follow consistent patterns, right? They all follow these very consistent patterns. So the way that they refer to these different forms, they use the root pa'al. um, don't worry about why. So if I'll just go through it. A pa'al form is, if you remember the thing that we just did, it looks exactly like that, right? Shamar. So this is what they call a pa'al perfect, third masculine singular. So that pattern pa'al with the two A's is how they, it's how they refer to, like, a simple active verb. Okay. Now You'll hear me, instead of calling that a pa'al, I'll often call it a cow. Um, it's just sort of it means light, but instead of saying pa'al, I actually don't know why they do that. They'll say it's a cow instead, but it's referring to this form, pa'al. So we're going to call it that for now, just for this lesson. But let me, as I go through these, you'll understand, because if it's a little hazy right now, you're right where you're supposed to be. So let me go to the next one. If we keep that same root, right? Pei, ayin, lamed, but we add nif'al. Make sure I do them in the same order that he does. Yeah, okay. Nif'al, a nif'al form, if you've heard me say that, this is passive. So this is oops, I almost wrote cow. This is active, right? This is passive, nif'al. So if I say that's a nif'al form, it's referring to this vowel pattern, nif'al, nif'al. Now let me give an example of what I mean. Okay. Keep using our. Actually, you know what? Let's use this. Nah, well, sorry, I changed my mind. Let's keep using the same root. So shin mem resh, which is to guard, right, or guarding. If I say shamar, he guarded. If I say nishmar, that is it, or he was guarded, right? So by changing the prefixes or the suffixes or the vowels or putting letters in between, as we'll see as we go through in just a second, they can change the meaning, or the nuance of the verb. So it can change it from an active to a passive, and so on. Let's just go to the next one, right? Okay. So we've got pa'al. We've got nif al. So if we stay with that same root, we have a p, oops, p-ale form. P-ale. Now this one's actually kind of frustrating, which is one of the reasons I don't know why they use the pei, ayin, lamed, because p-ale is, so it's supposed to, one of the main features is that it has a big dagesh right there in the middle. It doubles the middle radical of the root, the middle letter of the root. But because ayin, won't take a dagesh, as we all know, we've seen that time and again, it rejects it. You don't get to see it, which is kind of frustrating. So let's use a different root to kind of give the example. Sort of the standard one that you're going to see over and over again is this one. So if you guys know, Dalet Beit Reish has something to do with speaking, or saying something. Not always, but often. So davar is a word, right? Diber is the PL form. PL form. And oftentimes, if the pa'al is like simple active and the nifal is simple passive, the PL form, it can have a bunch of different nuances, but sort of intensive active is the place to start. So, for example, if shavar means to break something, then shiber would be like to smash it. It's the intensive form of the pa'al. Now you don't have to remember all of these or any of them really. I'm just trying to give you a brief overview of the way that Hebrew changes the different verbal, the different forms of the verb, or different meanings or aspects or nuances of the verb. So that's the PL. So we've got the pa'al or the cow. We have the nifal, the PL. Then you have the and what is the one that they use here? It's yeah. The pu'al. So you can see where all these forms are coming from. It's from this pei, ayin, lamed. So PL, pu'al. It's talking about these verbal patterns, right? So pu'al is like the passive of the PL. So it's an intensive passive. Now, again, it can take all kinds of different little nuances, but it's just a good place to start. So the pu'al is it's an intensive passive. But again, it doesn't show the middle radical. So what's a good root? Yeah, I can't think of a good root right now. It's okay. Just trying to give the idea. Sorry, that's okay. So pa'al, nif'al, p'al, pu'al. Then the next one that we see quite a bit is the hif'il. You'll always hear people just say the hif'il, but the hif'il. So again, pei, ayin, lamed. Now this one gets the prefix hey, hif, and then in the middle, it gets a yud. So I should probably space that out a little bit. Hif'il. Hif'il. The hif'il or the hif'il is your causative. It doesn't always mean causative, but if I were to say, I made Johnny hit the ball, that's a causative verb, right? I'm the subject is causing something else to do something. So the hifil will serve that role. It's a causative. So I really should have picked out examples of this. It's okay. Yeah. So I don't know that this form actually shows up anywhere, but theoretically, hish mir would be he caused someone to guard. He made someone guard. Again, I don't know that there might be a lexical nuance if that actually shows up, but theoretically, that would be the idea. Or katal means to kill in the pa'al, right? Again, I don't know this, but theoretically, hiktil would be he made him kill someone. Anyway, yeah. Sorry, somebody put in the chat, kanas. So that there, there are certain verbal forms. I was trying to find one that, it's okay. I'm going to try not to get too deep in this because it's just a matter of being introduced to the different ways. In later chapters, we'll go through each of these one at a time and give plenty of examples and explain, the ways that the perfect is formed, the imperfect is formed, the infinitives, the participles, all that stuff. But yeah, kanaso, ekanes, tikanes, tikansi, ikanes. Those are the kanas is one of the ones that you memorize with the hifal or the hifil. So the hofal form. Again, we'll start with our pa'al, hofal. This is a short o. Hofal is it's like the passive form of the hifil, which, if you look at it, that kind of makes sense. Hifil, hofal. So it's just the causative passive. And then the last one that we'll look at, and then we'll move on from this, I promise, is the hitpa'el. So hitpa'el, you'll notice this one's a little different. Hitpa'el, notice it has this whole big thing up front, hit. And if this were not an ion, you would get a doubled middle radical there. So it's like it looks a lot like a PL form, right? With theoretically, there'd be a double middle radical there. And of course, this, because that's an ion, doesn't have one. But hitpa'el, that's the reflexive. The Johnny was hit, or I'm sorry, Johnny hit himself. Subject is receiving the action of the verb. It's doing it and it's receiving it. So the hitpa'el will often do that. Again, all of these things have different nuances. We'll see them as we go through. But I just wanted to introduce you to this because hitpa'el doesn't always mean that, right? It can have like an iterative form or a nuance. But the way that they change it is not to add other words to the verb to give the verb different meanings. Like, okay, I'll add this word and that'll give it a passive meaning. That's not how they do it. They change the form of the verb itself by adding suffixes or prefixes or infixes. They change the vowel points, and that gives them a different meaning or a different nuance to the verb. Okay, so these are the different binyanim, or what else do they call them here? He goes through all the names. Yeah, so your different conjugation patterns, your different stems. You'll see these as you go through biblical Hebrew. I have a feeling that was more confusing than I wanted it to be, and it was only like one part of the page in the lesson. But anyway, it's good to talk about that. Okay. By the way, I didn't say this. If you have questions, please put them in the side chat. Tag me at Digital Hammurabi, and I'll try to answer them as we go through. Okay, let's move on to the participle. So we talked about this last week. In keeping with our Shin Mem Resh, to guard. The kal, or the pa'al, I'm going to call it kal though from here on out. Kal is, yeah. Sorry, Malachi Walker asks, "What is the hishta? What about the hishtafel, the pilpel, hitpolel?" The 7 that are mentioned here are the major ones. We're actually going to come into contact with the hishtafel today, but they're so infrequent, relatively speaking, that it's better to save that sort of stuff, until much, much later. Let's get all the basics down first. I do the same thing in this book. Ooh. Sorry. The same sort of thing is done in this guide, Learn to Read Ancient Sumerian. Like, Sumerian can be really, really complicated. I mean, it is complicated, but it's very difficult to learn on your own by using the grammars that are out there now, except for that one, I think. Not because the other grammars are bad in any way, but because they're meant more for reference. So they cover everything usually. So all the different ways that a particular verb or a different preposition or an infix could show up, they list them all and they talk about them all. And for the beginner, that can be really overwhelming and oftentimes unnecessary, because like the Hishtafel, even though we're going to see it today, you're going to see that it's sort of a set form, and it doesn't show up all that often. And so it's not something that the beginner should take the time, in my opinion, should take the time to really commit to memory and to practice, because it just doesn't happen all that. It doesn't show up all that often. So I'm trying to give you, and Sayal's, trying to give you what you need. And I'm even paring down some of the stuff that he talks about, because again, I'm of the opinion that let's go through it one time and get all the basics, and then we can come back at a second sweep and fill in more of the details. Okay, good question. All right, so the participle, we learned last week that shomer, this cholam and sere, are the vowels for the kal active participle or the pa'al active participle. So shomer, that's the masculine singular. Feminine, I don't know why I shomeret, so shomer, shomeret, and then shomrim, just as we would expect for the masculine plural, and shomerot for the feminine plural, which we would expect as well. So shomer, shomeret, shomrim, shomerot. This is the basic pattern for the kal active participle, right? Now, the participle, as we learned last week very briefly, but let's go over it again, acts a lot like an adjective. And actually, the way that he describes it, where is it? Yeah. He describes it the same way. So if we said ha'ish tov, right? Ha'ish tov, we notice that this is definite and this is indefinite. So this adjective tov, good, has to be a predicate in a predicate construction here, right? So this has to be the man is good. And the reason that that's the case is because if we were going to say the good man something, this would have to also have the definite article. They'd have to match, right? But this is how adjectives work. And if you want to learn about this, go back and watch the previous video. We go through adjectives in detail. So ha'ish hatov would be the good man, something. However, if there is no if there is no article here, that means that it's the man is good. The active participle often acts in the same way as an adjective. So ha'ish shomer, that's a terrible looking. Ha'ish shomer, if shin mem resh means to guard or guarding, then shomer is like the guarding one. So here it's the man is guarding, something. If we said ha'ish hashomer, it would act just like an adjective. The guarding man, something. The man, the guarding one, something. Watch is guarding something. this is how participles are used. So oftentimes when you see these, you'll see something like well, we'll see it today, but ha'ish medaber. This is a PL, active participle. Notice, or PL participle. Notice this doubled middle radical here, the tsere underneath. This is the form that the PL participle takes. And medaber means to speak. So the man is speaking or was speaking. Because this does not have, if this were Ha'ish Hamedaber, it would be the speaking man something. But that's how participles are used. Participles are used just like adjectives. So again, we're focusing on the kal or the pa'al. So you get shomer, shomeret, shomrim, shomrot. And that pattern, the OA pattern, can change a little bit depending on the letters that are in the root. So he gives several examples here. Let's go through some. Good grief. Shin mem ayin is to listen or listening, something to do with listening. Excuse me. So we would expect A, shomei, but because of this ayin at the end, and you see this a lot with the gutturals, they'll add this little, what they call a furtive patach, furtive pathak, however you want to say it, and it allows the guttural letter to be pronounced a little bit with an A vowel. So you get shomea, shomea. It's not shomei right? It's not, normally in Hebrew you read the consonant, then the vowel, then the consonant, then the vowel, then the consonant, then the vowel, right? But here, so you're not reading sho, may, you're reading, this is very clear, isn't it? You're reading sho, may, that way. That gut or that little pathak here allows that ayin to have a little bit of a pronunciation. So shomea, shomea. So that means that the full paradigm. See if I can get them all on here. I think I can. Good. Let me just make sure I'm not skipping anything. Okay. So shomea, shoma'at, and we'll talk about that in a second. Shoma'im, shom'ot. Those look confusing, don't they? Sorry. Okay. So shomea, we understand, the only difference being this little furtive patach because of the ayin. Instead of shome'et, because there's an ayin here, which likes an a vowel, you get shoma'at instead of shome'et, shoma'at. And then, the rest are straightforward shom'im and shom'ot. Okay, good. So again, the ayin is just coloring it from an e vowel to an a vowel. Sorry, I hear Oliver crying. I think he's woken up from his nap. Let's go through a couple more. Very similar again to the forms that you see in the adjective. So the root matzah with an aleph, matzah, is to find something. So matzati etzeh, I found this, I found it. Motz, oops, motze. Now I don't know that we talked about this. At least I don't remember talking about it recently. There are a lot of times when if an aleph closes a syllable, which it does here. So this is a CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant. When an aleph closes a syllable, oftentimes it will go quiet. They say it quiesces. You don't pronounce it. The vowel sound just kind of goes right through it. And you see that, well, anyway, it doesn't matter. So here it shows up in that way. So let's just do these one at a time. So motse, motzet. So instead of getting motzeet, it's like this aleph just disappears from pronunciation and you get motzet. So motze, motzet. And as you probably would guess, motzim and motzot. Oops. Oh, that won't work. It's too far down. Motzot. That is so ugly, and I'm really sorry. Motze, motzet, motzim, and motzot. Yep. Got two more that he talks about. Again, just kind of remembering the basic pattern that these different paradigms take. Shomer, shomeret, shomerim, shomerot, and then realizing that different radicals, like a hey or an ayin or so they can change in very consistent ways. They'll change the way that the pattern of the form. Okay, let's just go through very quickly. If you have a third hey, he gives the example of gala, to uncover something or reveal something. Gole, just like yafe, yafa, yafim, yafot. Gole. I'm just gonna write them all on the same. Sorry. Oops. Gola, golim, and golot. I've got to do that differently. But yafe, yafa, yafim, yafot. Gole, gola, golim, golot. The hey drops off. You get a comet hey here because, or instead of what you anticipate that et. So gole, gola, golim, golot, and then finally, he gives the form of the middle weeks. So the verb bo, like to go or to come. The pattern here, you know what? That works better. Yeah, I think that will provide me enough room. Okay. So ba, ba'a, ba'im, ba'ot. And essentially that middle radical drops out. Ba, ba'a, ba'im, ba'ot. Right. Those are the basic paradigms. I know I'm moving a little bit more quickly through the rest of these. I need to get through the end of this lesson. There are just a couple more things that we need to talk about. He talks about the uses of the participle, which we've already done. And he ends with the passive participle. So we've been looking at the active participle. So shomer, is he is guarding. There is a form that is a passive participle. And the verb that he uses here is katav, to write something. Oops. Katuv is like written. It's passive, like it is written. Let's see, give Shamaras. Okay. Yeah, we can go through those. So if the letter katuv, hamichtav katuv, the letter was written or is written. So it's the passive. So kotev would be like it writes. That doesn't make much sense, but katuv is it is written, passive. And the forms are, if you understand the katuv, a'u form, then the rest of these make sense. Sorry. I don't know why I feel the need to keep all of these separated. Just want to make sure there's not something else that he wants me to talk about. Okay. Yes. So katuv. Oops. Which we expect for the masculine singular. Now, these get the a ending. So let's just start off like this, katuva. Well, knowing what we know about how words are syllabified, if we syllabify this word like this, we know that the accent was here, katuv, and it was here, and now it's shifted this way, right? So now, oh, damn it, Josh. Wait, can I undo that? Yes. Oh my God. That's so amazing. So now the accent's here. So that means that we go to, if the accent is here, the tonic syllable is a pretonic, proprotonic. We go to an open proprotonic syllable. If it has a comets or a tsere, which it does, it gets reduced. So, ketuva, katuv, ketuva, and the same thing is going to be true here. If you put the eem ending on, or the ot ending on, you have the same problem. Problem isn't the word, but the same scenario. And each of these in open proprotonic syllables will reduce to shava. Oops. So katuv, ketuva, ketuvim, ketuvot, shamor, shamora, shamorim, shamorot. 𝀭Support. Oh, that's a good one to do. And then we'll be done. 𝀭Support. Oops. Let's do that in a different color. 𝀭Support, like locked. Guarded. I mean, yeah. I'm blanking on all the different usages of 𝀭Support, but isn't it locked? I think he uses this one here. Or bound. Yeah. So Hadelet Sagor, the door is closed. I thought, what is locked? Somebody help me out here. Asar is to bind something. I thought that's how you said you locked the door. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Asur, if we wanted to say the feminine singular, asura, and we syllabified it like this, we would want to go to an open propertonic syllable and reduce it to shava, right? But we can't reduce it to a simple shava because this is a guttural. So what the guttural wants is a composite shava. Asura. So asor, asora, asorim, asorot. Okay. All right. That's good. That's good. That gets us through the lesson. And I actually think that was useful. I know, I apologize if that was a little confusing, particularly there in the beginning. I'm just gonna turn the air conditioning down a little bit because it's hot in this little room. So let's get to, and this is good, right at 12:45. So what questions do you have about that lesson? If you have any, please put them in the side chat. Try to talk about them. But let's move on to the text. So we're in 1 Kings chapter 1. We are, where have we gone? Okay, question from Malachi Walker. Is it safe to assume that if I see a composite shava under a guttural, that it's hiding a real shava? Yeah, I mean, a composite shava is a shava. That's what it is. It's just that because it's a guttural, I mean, if you think about how gutturals were originally pronounced, we don't really do that they don't really do that in Hebrew. Today, you still get it in Arabic. So you get an ayin and a ghayin, even though I'm doing that terribly. They're, a glottal stop where if you were to say the word, I don't know if it's a word, but if you were to say, uh-oh, the sound that's here and here, particularly the one here where you have to close off the back of your throat in order to start the next sound, instead of saying, oh, you don't do that. You say, and you squeeze, oh, uh-oh. That is a glottal stop. And so if you think about how those types of vowels were pronounced, types of consonants were pronounced, you can then kind of get an idea of why there would have to be a little more of a vowel sound with it, particularly an A vowel sound. But they are real shavas. They're written that way to make the consonant easier to pronounce. Hope that was a lucid series of sentences that I just put together. Okay, so we're reading through the section here in 1 Kings chapter 1. I'm trying to remember exactly where we left off. So I think we started in verse 19. So Adonijah, who's the son of the king, who has not been officially made king, like David hasn't said, all right, Adonijah, you're king. He's taken it upon himself to start ruling. And he's able to do this to a certain extent because David is very old and weak. And Bathsheba, who is Solomon's mother, is understandably upset by this because David had promised that Solomon would reign. And so Nathan, the prophet, and Bathsheba are sort of conspiring together in a good way, as the text is portraying them, to go to David and to bring this up in such a strategic way that he will make a decision then to formally pronounce Solomon, to be the king. So Nathan has said to Bathsheba, I want you to go in first, and I want you to say these things to David. And while you're still speaking, using a participial form there, while you're still speaking, I will come in and I will fill up your words. I will corroborate what you're saying. So verse 19, Vayizbach shur umrit vitzon larov, Vayikra lechol b'nei hamelech, ולאביתר הכהן וליואב שר הצבא ולשלמה עבדך לא קרא. Okay. So it's continuing on the idea here, the sentence here. And he has sacrificed bulls or oxen and fatted calves and sheep or cattle, not cattle. It's am I blanking on? It's like sheep. It's from the flock. Larov, like too many. This is an idiomatic phrase. Larov. It means like aplenty. So he has sacrificed these things aplenty, right? Exceedingly. He's sacrificed a lot of them. Larov. So lamed here is two, and then rov is like an abundance, to an abundance. So he sacrificed them aplenty. So here we are looking at a vav, consecutive, imperfect, third masculine singular from Zion Beit Chet. So zavach, sacrifice something, to slaughter something. So he has slaughtered all of these, animals aplenty. Vaikra, and he called, like summoned, to, and the two here is there are certain words that mark their direct object with a different preposition. So if you remember, et or et often marks the direct object of a verb. So Bereshit bara Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim. When God began to create et the heavens, the et the earth. There are times though that the object is marked with one of these other letters, one of these other prepositions. So here, kara marks its object with the lamed, so you wouldn't say any necessarily, and he summoned to, or he called to. I mean, I guess you could, wouldn't you? But I guess that's fine. Now that I say it out loud, that's normal. And he called to, but the idea is he summoned all the children of the king, the sons of the king. Let's just go through that again. So Bain is son. It's an irregular plural. So the plural is banim. We know that in the construct form, or we will get there, is you get rid of the final mem, and it becomes a tsere here. The e becomes an a sound, and you also get a reduction of this vowel. So b'nai. So this is the sons of Hamelech, the sons of the king. Notice the hey, pathak, doubling dot for the definite article. So, and the children of the king are the sons of the king. And again, this lamed is governed by this verb kara. And Evyatar, the priest, Kohen, notice the form there. O, A, Shomer, Shomeret, Shomarim, Shomarot. This is just a standard noun, Kohen, but you notice the pattern. So the priest, and to Yoav, the prince or the commander of Hatzava. So Tzava is like the army, roughly the forces. But, and again, I would take this Vav here, not so much as and, but like adversative here. But Solomon, Shlomo, notice the Lamed here. And here's Kara again. But Solomon, and notice that it's fronted. So you don't, so here, and he called to, or he called, and then the objects, right? The ones that he called. However, this is fronted. The object is fronted, but Solomon. So it's emphatic, right? It's putting it out of general normal Hebrew word order. But Solomon, your servant, lo kara, he did not call. Let's talk about this form really quick now that we've gone through the pa'al, pl, nifal. So here we expect this pa'al, and it's really close, right? You just have two comets. You know what? Don't worry about why that. There's this little metheg, this little thing they call a bridle right here. It's making this a long A vowel. But anyway, we don't have to worry about that. I don't know why I brought that up. Sorry. But this is that pa'al form, right? So just a kal or a pa'al. Perfect third masculine singular from kuf, resh aleph. So he's called to all these other people, but not to Solomon. Ve'ata, and you, sorry, I'll read the whole thing. Ve'ata, Adoni HaMelech, ene chol Yisrael alecha, lehagid lahem mi yeshev al kiseh Adoni HaMelech acharav. So, and you, and I would bet that this ata here, if we look at A, I don't know this, but I'll bet that if we look down here in the apparatus, that there's a variant that has this as an ayin. So, and now. But here as it stands in the text, ata is and you. Second, it's a pronoun, second masculine singular. And you, my lord the king. So like a vocative. The eyes of. So, let me put this in. Ayin is an eye or a spring. And if we wanted to make this plural, ayin. Actually, let's leave it there for now so we can see it. You can get your eem ending, but the accent shifted, right? We remember the accent shifts. And when that happens, if you have this aye, which is what you have here, this aye diphthong, they call it. Aye, when it loses the accent, will shift to a. So ayin will go to a neem. And where is that form? There it is. Right there. Okay. And if it goes into the construct form, we want to say the eyes of something. It loses that final mem, and that becomes a tsere. So a ne, the eyes of. So that's where that form comes from. The eyes of all Israel. And notice this word kol can, it can mean each, every, all. It just depends on how it's being used in the context. It doesn't mean every Israel, like there's 9 different Israels and every Israel is doing something, but it's all Israel. So the eyes of all of Israel, alecha. So al is on or upon. And when you add these object suffixes on, this is the form that it takes, alecha. So this is a second masculine singular object suffix. The eyes of all Israel are upon you. Why? Lehagid. This is a good form to talk about. Lehagid. So the verb nagad. Man, that's just not good at drawing these on this. Nagad. I'm on YouTube a lot. Some would say more than I should be. Some of those people being me. And one of the things that, as all of you probably know very well, one of the things that gets debated or not debated often is there a God? Does God exist? And you always have two sides. You have the one side saying, there is no God. No God exists. And the other side is saying, tell me how you know that. Tell me how you know. Report to me how you know there is no God. And of course, that goes back to this Hebrew word, nagad. There's nagad. Tell me how you know that. So nagad means to tell, right? Or to report something. It can also mean to give evidence, interestingly enough. But there's nagad. Tell me how you know that. Nagad. Okay. This is one of the words that shows up in the Hifil. And remember how I told you that those basic meanings of the different binyanim, the different stems, are just kind of general, but they could take different nuances. So, for example, the Hifil, often will have this causative meaning. However, there are certain verbs that are just they don't take a causative meaning when they're in the Hifil. They just often will just show up in the Hifil. And this is true of the PL. This is true of all the stems. So here, nagad, which means to tell, you know that because nagad, tell me how you know that. Sorry. It shows up in the Hifil. I don't know if it only shows up in the Hifil, but it shows up a lot in the Hifil. So when you have a Hifil verb, remember you put that hey on the front. Well, you might remember that a nun that stands in between two consonants, it doesn't normally do that very well. And so because of that, it assimilates into the next radical. So here it's assimilating into the gimo, right? So if you were to take your magnifying glass, right, you were to zoom in, you would see a tiny little nun in there because it's all scrunched up. It's not actually a dagesh. It's all scrunched up nun. Okay. When I was teaching Hebrew, I've probably said this before, but when I was teaching Hebrew at seminary, I remember telling my students, and I told them this for 2 years. I taught the whole Hebrew cycle. And I remember telling them, look, I have to tell you, before you'll remember something, I have to tell you, you have to see it 100 different times. And so I would say something like this. Oh, let's look at our Magnifying glass. Because you guys think you're special, that I just came up with this magnifying glass. No. I've been using this for a while. I'm old and I don't come up with new things. But you are special, just for different reasons. But I, like, after about the 47th time doing this, I'm sure that they were like, yeah, we got it. There's a nun in there. No. You have to see it 100 times before you remember. Anyway, so the nun has assimilated. Now, we won't go into, because we haven't really learned the verbal forms quite yet. Yeah, I don't want to get too confusing. This is a verbal form, and when you see a lamed on the front of a verbal form, this is the probably the good takeaway. The thing to remember probably is this is an infinitive, like, because la means to. So la plus a verb, to tell, to report. So this is an infinitive construct. So if you were to parse this, you'd say it's a hifil infinitive construct from nun, gimel dalet, or nagad. And nagad means to tell. Nagad, tell me how you know that. So lehagid from nagad. So the eyes of all Israel are upon you to tell, and notice, to tell to them, woodenly, but that lamed is just marking the object, to tell them, mi yeshev al kiseh Adoni HaMelech acharav. So, me is who? Or let's just take me is who? Who is he? And he is she. Me is who is he is she. Let's all say it together. Me is who is he, and he is she. So who, and it can often be a question, like mise, who is this? Yeah, I'm trying to think of an actual example in the biblical text, but anyway. So me is who? So all the eyes of all Israel upon you to tell them who yeshev. So this is from the verb yashav. If you remember, if yashav somebody, what happens? Well, if yashav them, they sit down. What else would you do? And I remember if somebody shoved me, boom, I just sit down, right? So if yashav someone, they sit down. So yashav means to sit. Oh, Michael Kiram, a super sticker. I don't know what a super sticker is, but for $1.99, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. So if yashav someone, they sit down. So the verb yashav is to sit. When you put it into the imperfect form, we'll just go through this real quick. Oops, just put it in here with the first common singular prefix for an imperfect is aleph. So normally you'd get like eshmor, tishmor, tishmori, yeshmor, tishmor, and ishmor. Notice the first part of the verb changes. That's how they do it. Well, here, the way that, because of this first yud, what happens is instead of something like a shove. Oh, thank you, Michael. Michael. Oh, you know what? I keep forgetting to put these up. Look at that. Boom. Thank you very much. And he says, it's like a super chat. Sorry. It's like a super chat. But I had nothing to say. I just wanted to support you. Thank you. Hey, buddy. Here. Oh, no. What happened? Here, you want to come say hi? Yeah. Can you say hi? Here. What, you're going to show him there? Show everybody your boo-boo. Is that your boo-boo? Does it need kisses? Yeah. Is that better? Can you say hi? Hi. Hi. What can we say? Can you say? What can he say? I don't know what he says on command.
Yeah. What's a dinosaur say?
Ruff.
Rawr. What's a doggy say?
Ruff.
Ruff, ruff. What does a horse say? Why don't you just stay here for the rest of the time? People don't care about Hebrew. Let's just do more animal noises. What about a cow?
Moo.
And a pig? Do you know what a sheep says? That's right. Bah. A pirate.
Arr.
Arg. This is the greatest thing ever. Okay. Well, I love you. Can you say bye? Give everybody kisses. Great job.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I love you, and I want to give you a kiss. Okay, sorry.
No hug.
Oh, a hug. Sorry. No, hug. Oh, my God. Guy. Okay. I love you. I love you like Becky love cake. Mwah. Okay. There you go. And now he will hop around behind us. Okay. That was the greatest thing ever.
Can we come get lunch?
Yeah. Don't push the buttons. Here, you want to push a button? Go ahead. Push one of these buttons. Not that one. No. Not the record button. Here, push. What's this one? There you go. Okay. Go ahead. Push another one. There you go. Okay. All right. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay, go ahead. I love you. No, go. Okay. Come on. Oh, my goodness. You're amazing. Mwah! Thank you for the kiss. Did you go get some lunch?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Anybody ever been on cloud nine? Because that's where I am. Okay. That was amazing. Okay. I don't know what all sounds he played, but I guess I can probably turn them off. No, I can't. Are they still playing? I don't think they're still playing. Yeah, okay. Sorry. That was great. So, where was I? Okay, so the way that these verbs are formed, the first yud, you get a shave. Oops. Te shave. Te shavi. And so on. But it's that's the pattern that it takes. A shave, te shavi, ye shave, and so on. So here, ye shave, this is, where are we? This is a cal imperfect, third masculine singular from yashav. And that sere is representing that first yud. So the yud here is you can almost picture it like this. This yud is the marker of the imperfect third masculine singular. And it's doing this. It's putting its sere there to kind of become a vowel, a long vowel like that. Like that. So ye shave. But here, they're just deleting the yud. Ye shave. Okay. Very good. So who will sit upon kisei, the throne? As Malachi Walker says, I think we're all in agreement that we should bring back the animal noises. I agree. You know, that should be part of the weekly lesson. Okay, so who will sit upon the throne of my Lord the King, Adoni Hamelech, my Lord the King, Acharav. So achare is after, and if you want to put vav for the third masculine singular object suffix on, you get acharav as the ending.
after him. So as a complete sentence here, and you, my lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are upon you to tell Nagad. Nagad, tell me how you know that. To tell them who will sit upon the throne of my lord the king after him. V'haya kishchav Adoni Hamelech im avotav v'hayiti ani uvni Shlomo Chataim. It's pretty deep and would not be any fun. Okay. And it will be, so this is the Cal perfect, Cal Vav consecutive perfect, third masculine singular from Hey Yod Hey, Haya. So remember that Vav, and then if you get a verbal form, it will often flip the meaning. That's kind of the way to think about it. It flips the meaning or the tense, not the meaning, the tense. So Haya normally is a Cal perfect, third masculine singular. So it was, he was. However, when it's in this construction, that's why I call it the Vav consecutive, either perfect or imperfect, it flips the meaning or flips the tense or the aspect, whatever. I know for all you linguists out there, there's a difference between tense and aspect, but for us, it's not that big a deal. So instead of saying, and he was, it flips it, and he will be, or and it will be. That's how these work. And it will be, so, kish, chav, kishachav. So, ka is like, or as, or when. And in this particular form, this is an infinitive construct form. We'll get into those, I don't remember when, later. But shin, kaf, beit is to lie down. So when, when the lying down of is probably a very wooden way to say that. Adoni Hamelech, my lord, the king. So, to smooth that out, we would say, and this is how we do these. When my lord, the king, lies down. So that's how these constructions are, these temporal constructions. So often this is a bait up here instead of a kaf. So when my lord, the king, lies down, im avotav, im is with an ayin, it's im. So av is an irregular plural, avot. So av is father, avot is fathers. And then when you make that a plural, you say, when you add the third masculine singular object suffix av on, you get avotav. When my lord the king lies down with his fathers, the hayiti, so the Cal perfect paradigm for Hey Yod Hey is hayiti, hayita, hayit, haya, hayita, hayinu, hayitem, hayiten, hayu, hayu. Don't ask me why I memorize these. It's because I have problems. But this T ending is first common singular. So, and I will be, notice you would expect the perfect to be I was, but here it's I will be, and I will be. And then she says, ani. So it's emphatic, and I myself will be uvni and my son. So it's interesting here the way that Hebrew does this. You would expect I and my son to have a plural verb, but it doesn't. It's like it's tacked on afterwards. So, and I will be, and my son, Shlomo, Solomon, chataim. Chata is an adjective. It means like sinful, guilty. But the idea here is, so it's in the masculine plural, which is interesting, right? This is singular, first common singular. This one is plural. It's weird, the way that came together. So here, and it will be when my lord the king lies down with his fathers, that I and my son Solomon, like considered sinners or guilty ones. In other words, right now, while David is living, nothing's going to necessarily happen to them because David's still alive. But once David dies, you think about how these, dynasties worked and how regime changes worked. You would often have any rivals killed so that they wouldn't usurp the throne later, right? So the idea here, she's like, my life will be in danger if you don't do something about this, and quickly. Okay, 120. We got time for one more verse, I think. I know we haven't gotten very far. I'm sorry about that. V'hinei odena medaberet. Sorry, let me just say this as it would sound. V'hinei odena medaberet im hamelech v'natan hanavi ba. And again, hine, we start in our minds with the wooden behold, but it's sort of like drawing attention to this. And look, pay attention. While she was still, and I know all of that in Odena, so this is from the word od, so still yet more. And then the na here is a feminine singular object suffix. And the way that you read these is while still she, while still her, but this is acting as a subject. While she was still medaberet. Medaber is a PL active participle or a PL participle, masculine singular. Notice the double middle radical, medaber. Medaberet is how you write the feminine singular. And davar in the PL is to speak or to say. So, and while she was still speaking is the idea here. Like, remember I said the participles are often about the process. It's not a snapshot. It's like a video reel. So while she was still speaking, im hamelech, with the king, that Nathan Hanavi, the prophet, ba, came. So cow perfect, third masculine singular from bo, that he came. In other words, when he said earlier, while you're still talking, I'll come in and, fill up your words. This is what happens in verse 22. And, look, whatever, I don't know. While she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet came in. Do we have time for one more? We do. That one pretty quickly. Vayagidu lamelech lemor, hine Natan hanavi. Vayavo lifnei hamelech, vayishtachu lamelech al apav arza. So, and they told from Nagad. Notice your form here. So that Nagad, when you put this into the Hifil imperfect, let's just do this. The form that you get is for the first common singular, and then you want to add that to the root. And of course, when you have two consonants, this nun shrivels up into a little ball, and you end up with agid. So agid. Then in the second masculine singular, you get tagid.
Second feminine singular would be tagidi. Then yagid. Yagid. And then if you get your vav pathak doubling dot, vayagid. And where's our form? Okay. So vayagid. And then this is a third plural. Yagidu is the third plural form. So vayagidu, and they told. Nagad, tell me how you know that. And they told, or this is probably like an impersonal plural. So, and it was told or reported, whatever, to the king, saying, Lemor, Nathan the prophet is here. Behold, Nathan the prophet. You know, Nathan the prophet's here. And he came before the king via vo. So this is from bo. This is a cow. Five consecutive imperfect, third singular from bo. And he came before the king. Now this is your hishtafel. We've got a couple minutes. Just quickly do this. I'm not going to go through the actual form. This is from, in all probability, chava. So chet. Vav hey, chava. The third hey is dropped off. And this is that hishtafel form. Hishtafel. So here's your sht. So yishtachavu or yishtachu, depending on the person. So here we have yishtachu. It means to like bow down and worship. This is the singular form. So, and he bowed down to the king, al apav, upon his nose. Artza. Last thing we'll talk about, eretz. We all know eretz is land, earth, ground. Can mean a bunch of different things depending on the context. Oftentimes, however, we don't get this. It's a segulate form, but we don't often get. Sometimes we get aretz. And here, we have a comet's hey on the end. And when it does that, it drops that to a shava. But notice where the accent is. It's back here. Artza. Malachi Walker, I see your question. I'll get it in just a second. It's a good question. And where was I? I don't remember what I was talking about. Artza. So, right, this is the this is the directional hey. So to the ground, toward the ground. Oops. Okay. Okay, so your question is, why does vayavo have a comet and not a hierarch since a cow imperfect? Good question. So we'll get to this when we get to the middle weeks. So the question that he's asking in Eshmor, Tishmor, Tishmari. These are the. Oops. Ugh, good grief, Josh. Sorry. Sorry. Tish. Tishmari. These are the standard prefixes for an imperfect. So the question then is why isn't this why is this a comments here instead of a heric? If you let me just see if I can find the paradigm real quick for second week, or what they call hollow verbs. Right. So this one's with cum. That's okay. You know what? I'm not going to hold it up. That would be silly. The middle weeks. The one that he has here is cum. And the way that they form this is akum takum. Maybe it would be easier to hold it up. It probably wouldn't though, would it? Sorry, I shouldn't make decisions like this on the fly. Yeah, it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna. All right. So anyway, but akum, takum, takumi, yakum, takum. So avo, tavo, tavoit, yavo, tavo. It's that A is because of the middle week. I have no idea if any of that made any sense just now, but I hope it did. But good question. Okay. Right. Sorry. I feel like I kind of lost track after Oliver came in here because that was super cute. And I don't know what to do after super cute. I just want to go out there and hug him. But this has been great. You guys have been fantastic. Again, thank you so much for the, it's not a super chat, but the super sticker. Michael, I really appreciate that. It was very kind. So please go back and, go, if you're new to the series, go back and take a look at, all the earlier lessons. It'll bring you up to speed as to where we are. Of course, as you know, all these lessons are free. So, have at them, watch them as many times as you like. And if you have questions or comments, please put them in the comments section. I'll try to get to them as I can. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, it looks like we have 15 people watching. It's fantastic. 15 people watching Biblical Hebrew. I think that's awesome. So if you'd like to come in and translate with me, let me know. We'll see if we can't make that happen. It's a little easier now that we have StreamYard. But this has been great. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. And I'll see you next time. Until next time, resist poor scholarship. Remember, always ask, how do you know that? Thanks, guys.